Hey guys, this is Matthew. So I apologize if the sound quality here is not super great. I've got a really poor quality headset here with me today, so I'm going to do the best I can with it. The purpose of today's tutorial is I use Markdown. I use it for a lot of stuff, and I wanted to show people, especially if you're not used to Markdown, if it's not something you're familiar with, or you're maybe a less technical user. I think I'm a software developer and we use Markdown for a lot of things. If you're not familiar with it, or you're in any kind of content creation where you're writing, let's say, blog posts, Markdown is great. So I wanted to give you an overview. Why is Markdown exciting? What is Markdown? Markdown is, in a nutshell, a way of representing formatting in plain text. So, you think about something like HTML. We have tags for representing bold, italics, but HTML is while it's just plain text under the covers, it is not friendly to hand edit. And then you think about an alternative like docx, like a Word document, and there the formatting is all very straightforward. You're using an interface, but you're kind of locked into the tools, right? And ultimately, under the covers, you have a much more complicated document behind the scenes. In most cases, what I find is that's all overkill. It also kind of locks you in. So when you use something like a Word document, you really have to figure out, is that document format going to support the output formats that you want? If you want to turn a Word doc into HTML, it's not always a pleasant process. The existing save as HTML options are they're not great. The HTML is pretty messy, and if you wanted to use it in some other fashion, hand editing it perhaps, then it's not clean, and there's a lot of work you have to do to get it clean. So on the other hand, Markdown is just text. It's just plain text, and so you can use any text editor to edit it, and then you can easily convert it from Markdown into HTML or wherever else you need to go. You can convert it from Markdown to docx, and so it makes a nice source format. The other advantage is it's just pure and simple. There's nothing really going on behind the scenes, and there's no mystery. And so you can get to this sort of level of purity of your source document and just your text and the bare minimum of what you need for formatting. This is really appealing to me. I think if you're a content creator, creating blogs, creating content for, let's say, ebooks or articles or something like that, I think Markdown is an excellent choice for a source format. So the goal for today's video is I want to show you just a bare sort of introduction to Markdown. If you're familiar with Markdown already, this is probably not going to be useful to you. It's aimed at people who maybe are non-technical or less technical. We are going to use a command line tool today to convert Markdown to HTML, but promise it won't be too tricky. And I'll try to explain everything as I go. So the goal, basically, I want to show you Markdown, and I want to show you how to convert Markdown to HTML, and that'll be enough to get you started. Okay, so hey, I have a text editor open here. This is Text Wrangler. It's on the Mac, and it recognizes Markdown format already. If you're on Windows, you can use Notepad++, and there's a syntax highlighting plugin that you can get. I'm not going to go into that here. Maybe I'll do that in a future video, but it's nice to have syntax highlighting. And what I mean is, when you're doing Markdown, here I'll give you an example. So this is a line of text. No, not text. Okay, so now let's say I want text to be italicized. In Markdown, the way that I can do this is put an asterisk on either side. Text and then some, and it doesn't have to be one one word, it can be a whole line. So here I have this is a line of text and then some, and anything that is blue here, or teal, whatever color that is going to be turn out as italics. So when you look at that, you can see that it's italics, and the syntax highlighting is kind of nice because now I can just visually see, okay, I've got some formatting going on there. But you can also see, I mean, the beauty of Markdown is it's really easy to read. Like, those asterisks don't get in the way of the understanding, and it's very easy for me to sort of picture, okay, that's emphasized in some way. So maybe I want this to be bold. Okay, so if I want to make this bold, I just put 2 asterisks around it. Again, it's very simple, easy to remember, and it's when you look at it visually, it kind of stands out. The syntax highlighting is nice as well. So there are alternatives. So if I do double underscore around my word, that's also going to be bold. And italics are done like this, alt. So just 1 underscore gives you italics. So you can use either. This and this are equivalent, as are the bold. Some people like the underscores, some people like the asterisk. I use the asterisks. I don't feel particularly strongly. So what we have here is a paragraph. And in Markdown, a paragraph is defined as basically anything that doesn't have an empty line, any text. So what's interesting is continue. I should probably, so if I hit enter here, I'm still in the same paragraph, right? But I've sort of physically wrapped my text. I can also continue to type. So let me also just show you. So if I add these all back, get rid of those line endings. So now this is 1 line, right? This is also considered a paragraph. So either of those options is a paragraph, as long as it doesn't have an empty line in between. So now this is a new paragraph. Cool. Okay, got it? So I find this hard to read, so I can apply, view text display, soft wrap text. I can ask the editor to do the wrapping for me, and every editor has something like this. 80 characters looks nice. There are some advantages to doing it this way, but also if I want to, I can reflow the text myself, and most editors have an option to do this where you can split lines on 80 characters or whatever the width is you want. It's up to you, doesn't matter. Markdown will handle it. Markdown looks at the sort of 2 or more new lines as a new paragraph. So 1, 2, now I have a new paragraph. Okay. So let's take a look at a header. So headers are defined with this pound sign, and you can do like so. And this is going to be, if you're familiar with HTML, it's going to be an H1 header. So that's an H1. So now let's get an H2 header on here, like so. And let's see, an H3 looks like this. Right, and there's an alternative syntax for headers as well. And this, like so, that's an H1. And if you do the single dash, that's an H2. The nice thing about the lines is it gives you sort of this separation, right? So it's really easy to visually see. I've got a new section here. So this is a paragraph. Okay, so as I have mentioned, let's go back here. Let's bold this guy up. Okay, so if I do like so, have an empty line, so this is a new paragraph. Now, multiple line breaks like this will all result in just one paragraph, right? You're not going to get empty space. So if you need empty space, you can use HTML inline here and do a BR, which is like a break, and that will show up in the final output, at least if you're using output to HTML. So you have to see, depending on what output format you want, how that performs, but that is kind of a quick workaround. Okay, let's see. I also want to show you a link. So if I do these square brackets like this, followed by parentheses, like so, google.com. Okay, so now I have a link. So that will show up as a link in the final HTML. This is going to be the text for the link, and this is the URL, obviously, behind the link. Images are pretty similar. So I'm just going to do a quick example here. This is sort of the alt text, and then URL.jpg. I don't have one ready right now, but you can kind of imagine. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. But the difference between a link and an image link is just that exclamation point. So, all right. Now that I've shown you sort of the basics of Markdown syntax here, this is probably 95% of what you're going to need at any time. Like, this is what I find. I don't need other like fancier syntax, but it's there. You can go look it up. I'll show you the site. Okay, now it's time. Let's go, and I'll show you how to convert Markdown into HTML. And what we're going to use today is a little utility called Pandoc. It's really excellent. It's available for all of the major platforms, and you can go ahead and read the instructions on how to install this. It is a command line utility. If you're not used to the command line, this can be a little bit I don't know, some people get nervous. It's really simple. If anything, it's simpler than using an application with a user interface, because all you need to know is the command you need to put in. So I have Pandoc installed here, and I'm just gonna bring that up. Do the -v brings up the version, right? And now we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna show you first off. Let me remove, I had converted this earlier. Let me remove that, and now I'll show you what's here. So I've got my markdown.md file. The MD is for Markdown, and that's what you see here, right? This is markdown.md. And so now I want to convert this to HTML, and I'm going to use Pandoc. So the first thing I do is I type in Pandoc. Now if you do pandoc.v and you don't get something that looks like this, that shows the version number and says compiled with and so on and so forth, and you get a message that says something like, I don't know what you're talking about, from your operating system, it means that Pandoc is not yet in the path on your operating system. And so I'm not going to teach you how to do that right now, but in a nutshell, when you run a command, if you use just the name of the command, the operating system doesn't know where to go and find it. And so there's something called a path that says, go look in these folders in order and see if you can find something called Pandoc. And if it can't find it in one of those folders, it says, I don't know where it is. So that's fine, but then just go, if you get that kind of message, go and go to Google and put in, add to path on whatever your operating system is, and you'll find the instructions on how to do that, and it's pretty simple. Don't let it scare you away. So once you have it so that when you type Pandoc, you will get some that, Pandoc -v will give you this output, then you're ready. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Pandoc, and I'm going to put in the name of my Markdown file, which is markdown.md. then I'm going to do O, then I'm going to do markdown.html. What it's going to do is it's going to look and say, oh, he's using a file with a Markdown extension, so it must be Markdown, and he's using an output file with an HTML extension, and so he must want HTML, and so it's going to kind of guess for me, and this -o says output this file, so markdown.html will be created, and then it's going to do the conversion. It's going to go through and it's going to look at my Markdown, and it's going to say, okay, what's the corresponding HTML, and I'm going to produce that. So I'm going to do that, and you'll see, if you see no output, it's good. It means it worked and nothing went wrong, right? Now I should have an HTML file. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. Now you can see the structure of our document. And if you go back and look at the source document here, you can see our headers, you can see our alternative headers. This is the break that we put in place. Here's bold and italic, which we put in place, right? This is our link, should work. Yep, check it out. So everything seems to be working the way we expected it, right? And you can actually go view page source, and you can see the actual markdown that, or markup that it created here for the HTML. You will notice that it doesn't create any of the boilerplate. So if you're, used to HTML documents like this one, you're used to seeing like doc type and all of this, right? It's not going to produce that. So if you need that for some reason, you're going to have to take this content and put it into the boilerplate. That's not a big deal, and maybe in the future I'll show you some easy ways to do that as well. Okay, so I think that's it for the conversion stuff. Let me just introduce you briefly to John Gruber's Markdown sort of reference material, and that'll be useful to you in the future. So this daringfireball.net, this is John Gruber's website, and John Gruber created Markdown syntax maybe 2005 or something like that. I'm not 100% sure. But this actually lists all of the rules here. The ones that I showed you today are probably the most common that you'll need. You'll want links, and you'll want bold and italics, and you'll want headers, and that covers probably 95% of it. But there's so much more you can do, and if you are creating some content and you're wondering if you can do that legitimately in Markdown, you just visit the site, and it's got all the instructions here. Remember that you can add HTML tags directly to the Markdown, which gives you a lot of flexibility, and those will just be ignored by the Markdown processor. So that's also an option if you're familiar with HTML. If you're not, don't worry about it. The other nice thing that's kind of cool here on this site is if you put in .text, it actually brings up, so these pages are all written in Markdown, so it brings up the Markdown for these pages, and these pages are relatively complicated. You can see there's a lot of formatting going on here, and this will show you how John Gruber actually did that in Markdown. So it's a nice example. Most of that you're never going to need. It's probably way too complicated for what you're working on, but if you need it, or you're working on a big documentation project and you've got to embed examples or something crazy like that, this is a good reference, and just seeing the Markdown sometimes is all you need. All right, so I think that's it. So again, my name is Matthew, and I hope you found this useful. I use Markdown all the time. I use it for almost everything. I never use Doc or DocX unless I have to, and I'd much prefer doing all writing in Markdown. And so now you've seen the basics. You've seen how to take something from Markdown and put it into HTML. And you'll see how easy that is. You can use the Pandoc tool for that conversion, and you get this just really clean. The writing process is clean, content creation, and then you have a ton of flexibility about how to convert it to some other format, and ultimately the output that you get from that is a lot cleaner as well. So okay, so thank you very much for watching. I hope this was useful. If you have questions, just add them to the comments, and I'll reply. If you liked it, a thumbs up would be much appreciated. So, all right, thanks much. Have a great day.